Hi, I'm Alistair McIntyre. I got some disturbing news the other day there about OSMTH, that's the Knights Templars. I will say, to explain, the Knights Templars are not a Masonic order, but we are a charity, and we're an NGO at the United Nations, and we have a priory in NATO. All in all, it looks like this is a great organisation that is doing good work, certainly to help the Christians in the Middle East, and we support local charities and so forth. I joined the organisation about 11 years ago when I came to Canada, and I have to say I've been kind of disappointed on where the Grand Priory of Canada has gone since then. I don't think we've made any real progress, and we seem to be very disorganised in running each of the priories. At the moment, in Canada, we have the main priories in Windsor, the second most populous priories in Toronto, and then that's basically the two priories we have. We do have one in Ottawa, although I think technically it's not a priory, it's more like a commandery, because you should have at least 25 members to be a priory. And I believe Ottawa's now only got 8 members, so really it seems to be going back the way. And certainly they had to postpone the investiture very recently, due to the prior's ill health, but it then came out that in fact they didn't have a single knight and dame that they were going to invest into the order at that investiture. So clearly there's no real progress going there. We also had a commandery in Edmonton, but that's now seems to have just gone, it's dead. And we tried to get one going in Halifax in Nova Scotia, but that's also dead now. There's no progress there at all. And certainly I'm a member of the Toronto Priory. It's called St. James Priory. And certainly over a number of years the organisation within St. James Priory has not been good. For quite some time no one knew how many members we actually had, because unfortunately, while every year we get new knights and dames invested into the order, a lot seem to just disappear and don't turn up, and we don't know what's happened to them. The last priory we have, who will be handing over this September to a new prior, has done a decent job, I think, in getting to know who's actually a member of the priory, and seems to have got our finances sorted out and our bookkeeping good again. So handing over to the new prior in September, hopefully he's in the position to start taking the order forward within Toronto. My opinion of Windsor is that it seems to be well run, well organised, and that's of course where the order started in Canada. It was first mentored by the USA and then became its own priory. But the overall state of the order in Canada is, at the moment, I don't think it's going anywhere particularly. But what's happened recently has kind of soured my view on OSMTH. What I'm finding is that they have a total lack of communication at the top of the order. I mean, they've never yet put out a single communication to their knights and dames. So we don't know what's going on. They have their secret meetings at the top of the order twice a year internationally. I think the next one's in Bulgaria. But we don't get any real minutes from that to tell us who did what or what they're discussing or anything. You get general comments, like they've had people giving a talk about the problems in the Middle East and the terrorist attacks and so forth. But there's no practical information about what they're actually doing. We have priories in each of the 3 United Nations enclaves. I think it's Vienna, Geneva, New York, and we have a NATO priory. But we never actually see what they actually do in those places. There's never a report or anything. I mean, for example, we're a religious charity order, Knights Templars, and we're very proud of the heritage of the Knights Templars. But what I learned last Monday was that, I mean, if you think of the Knights Templars, you think of a massive big red cross in the front on a white background. I mean, you can't be more noticeable than that. And the job was to protect pilgrims to the Holy Land. And as you know, if you read anything of the history, you'll see that they had a great fighting force that fought the Muslims out there. But what I learned on Monday was that our leadership has decided that they may be a target of a terrorist attack. And so now when you go to the international meetings, you don't see the Knights Templar mentioned anywhere. What you might see is a little sign saying Magistrate Council Meeting in small, a little small placard. It seems they're so concerned about security that they've actually removed some information from their website. And of course, if you go to the website, you'll see there's never anything new on it because the top brass has no idea of how to communicate. Now, it does seem that there's admirals and generals and so forth in there, but from what I can see, most of them have an administration background. They don't have a fighting background. So, I mean, I think what came to my mind when I heard about the security concerns is that we're run by a bunch of cowards, basically. And frankly, that just upsets me terribly. I mean, I make a point of being approachable because I do the newsletter for the Grand Priory of Canada. And I put my telephone number down, my email address down. You can contact me, no problem at all. But it now seems that no one wants to be contacted, and we mustn't mention email addresses in communications because someone might get it and then we might be attacked, and boo-hoo-hoo is all I can say. You don't give in to terrorists, you attack back. Don't accept it. Because as soon as you give in, I mean, it's like the 9/11 disaster. You know, for a good few months after that, there was many less people flying. But the fact of the matter is, there's more people killed in America by handguns than there are through terrorist attacks. And more people are killed in the street just getting run over by car accidents than are killed by terrorists. So if you give in to terrorists, that's exactly what they want. I was very proud of Scotland after the 9/11 because at that time airports were deserted almost. And so they were doing massive promotions to try and get people to move again. And what I found then was that all Scots airports had never been busier. And why was that? Because in my view, Scots didn't give a damn about these terrorists. What they saw was a really cracking good deal and they took advantage of it. And to hell with terrorists. I mean, the chance of you being killed in a terrorist attack is mind-blowingly small and tiny. But our leadership has decided that they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to talk about the Knights Templars. And as I say, my real problem is that we've got leaders that don't have any clue on how to motivate and communicate with the order. I mean, we have individual knights and dames that do extraordinary work all over the world. But the leadership doesn't seem to want to engage with them. I'll give you a kind of example on this. When I was the newsletter editor for St. James Priory in Toronto, almost immediately we started to discuss the plight of Christians in the Middle East. That was about 8 years, I think, I did that, or 7 years I did the newsletter there. But only a couple of years ago did the OSMTH actually make a statement against the Christians in the Middle East. and they called on the officers of the order to publicise wherever they could the plight of Christians in the Middle East. But that to me was 5 years too late. And when they called for the officers, why didn't they call on the knights and dames to do something? That's what I mean. The leadership is totally and utterly pathetic. We've never had a letter from the new Grand Master of the Order. You think when he became Grand Master, he would put out a communication to all the knights and dames, telling them of his vision and all this kind of stuff. But no, we've never received a single word from him. Our new religious leader of the order has never communicated with any of us. I mean, there's something wrong when the top of the order do not communicate. And I've often said, I mean, the only thing they ever really say is, well, a lot of the work we do is quite sensitive, and we don't want to mention what we're doing because that might put our negotiators under pressure and put them in danger. But is everything we do so sensitive? I mean, we never get told of anything. The only thing we've heard about that got any kind of publicity was the new church that we got up in Jordan, which was on the centre of where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. But you know, to me, I was thinking, yes, we'd now built another church. And I must confess, I couldn't see the point. I would rather have seen the money go towards helping the Christians. Also, there doesn't seem to be any great leadership going on. I mean, I ask, why is the main OSMTH website not updated more often? And they tell me it's because no one sends us news. So, if you're going to raise things with the top brass, you can only go through the Grand Prior of your country, and then he will take your comments and questions to the overall order, and should come back to you with answers on what they said. I asked the current Grand Prior of Canada to raise two topics. One, I complained bitterly of the lack of communication and asked them to take that up and see if they couldn't do a better job. The other thing I suggested was, due to the lack of news, I said, Canada is an amazing multicultural society. And I said, we must have members that can speak every language that we're in, of the countries that are members of OSMTH. So I said we could appoint a knight or a dame to communicate directly with the Grand Prior in these countries to actually get a report. I mean, they could phone or they could email, and while that order might not be able to speak English or something, they could speak in their own language, and our knight and dame could translate into English what's going on, and we could then forward that to the OSMTH website for them to publish. So I thought these two ideas were very good, and I thought it should be raised, and the Grand Prior said he would raise it. But the problem with this is that he's come back now. He hasn't come back to me on either of those two topics. I don't know if he raised it or not, because there are no minutes from these meetings. So, I mean, he could have said he raised it, but I know he didn't raise these points. Then, as I say, in Canada, at a meeting in Ottawa, our Grand Prior agreed to a 3-year term in which he would pass over to the Grand Chancellor to take over. There was an option that he could run a 4th year if there was some emergency or something. What's actually happened, he did his 3 years, and then he just blithely went on for a 4th year, where I think September sees the end of his 4th year. He never asked permission, he never explained why he was doing a 4th year, he just did it. And now I've heard that he wants to do a 5th year, and he was just going to do a 5th year. So at that meeting, I said it was unacceptable, and I believe if he went for a 5th year, we should call a vote and where he would explain why he wants to do a 5th year. It looks to me like he's trying to get up in the order into the international level, and that's why he needs a 5th year to establish his case for being promoted. So in other words, he's selfish. He's looking after number one. And if you look at what he's achieved in Canada, he's achieved nothing in Canada. Nothing at all. So I don't really understand where we're going. I mean, I got sight on Monday of the membership of OSMTH. It's certainly declined, but there are startling information in there. For example, Bulgaria now has about 457 members, knights and dames. They've exploded on the scene. That growth seems to have stopped now. There's only one new member in, I think, 2014, which was the date of the last report that we've got. But nevertheless, that's pretty amazing how many knights and dames they've got in. Canada, if I remember rightly, we're down at 147. In 2014 we saw a decline. And in the USA they've gone down by hundreds of members because they found out that they weren't keeping track of how many members there were in the United States. So they've drastically had to revise it, which has meant we've really gone down in numbers. And I think that's because of the lack of communication at the top. I mean, you think even if you're an admiral or general in administration, you would have good admin and good communications. But it seems we've just got a lot of dumb idiots at the top. And I suppose I can say that I'm actually very angry. I've invested 11 years in this order. I've become the Grand Officier of the Temple of Jerusalem. So, I mean, and I'm saying I'm the newsletter editor for Canada. So I think I've contributed quite a lot to the order. But, you know, if the order's not going anywhere, then I'm thinking to myself, why am I in this order? It's not achieving anything. It's not making a real difference. And as I say, while they tout out that being an NGO of the United Nations sounds brilliant, trying to find out what they actually achieve is next to impossible. And why are we a priory? Why do we have a priory in NATO? I suppose it's because of these admirals and generals, but what are we achieving in NATO? What are we doing? I don't know. And I've written to people asking the questions. What are we doing? Normally I don't even get a reply, just ignored. So it's just that when you start looking at what we should be able to do, I mean what the Knights Templars did when they were around is just amazing. And I mean, with thousands of them died protecting the pilgrims going to the Holy Land. And then of course we got badly done in by the French king, who was just, I mean, he'd taken France to the brink of bankruptcy. And so he figured he could attack the Knights Templars and get all their money. Of course that didn't happen. They couldn't find any of the money after they burnt the Grand Master at that time. And of course subsequent to that we saw that the Pope had actually written exonerating the Knights Templars. I mean, that letter's now available for you to see online. So all the accusations at that time were obviously false. So I mean, the history of the order is amazing. And I say, it wasn't just fighting. They were a great commercial centre with the banking. I mean, they almost created banking. But they were also interested in technology and new means of agriculture and all of that, because all of that helped them to develop the Knights Templar lands to a better extent. So they're really interested in what was new in medicine and agriculture and so forth. But today, I mean, I really don't know what we do and what we've achieved. I mean, the Vicar General of the Order was the first Grand Prior of Canada. And I have to say, he's a minister, you know. But he's very un-minister-like. I mean, if you actually saw him and talked to him, he's an old guy with a nice, gentle, angelic face, and he talks very nicely to you. But underneath, that's a vicious old man. I mean, he's out for himself again. He'll do things so that he'll get the credit. And he was at that meeting where our Grand Prior agreed to serve on a 3-year term. But he's obviously quietly encouraged our current Grand Prior to go as long as he can. I mean, I think the original Grand Prior was in office for 11 years. And that's cited as why our current Grand Prior wants to go on. But the fact of the matter is he agreed to 3 years, which is about the right time for a CEO of a company, because, you know, you've got all the enthusiasm and plans and everything for a 3-year period. But by the time you get to 3 years and get into the 4th year, frankly, you're probably running out of steam a wee bit. And that's why we need new blood coming in all the time. So, I've got to the point where we've got a liar as a Grand Prior in Canada, clearly. I mean, he said he served 3 years, he's now in his 4th year, so he lied. That's fact, it's not disputable. Then if you want to communicate with the top brass, you have to go through the Grand Prior to get him to ask questions. I asked him to ask 2 questions at the top level. He didn't do it. He didn't report back to me. So again, he lied when he said he'd take that up. So we've got a proven liar who really is dishonourable. I mean, if you're going to be a Knights Templar, there should be standards. He clearly doesn't meet those standards. And then, as I say, to hear that we've got a bunch of cowards running us that don't want to advertise their Knights Templars just made me totally ashamed of the order. And frankly, I think at the end of the day, while I was getting pretty dischuffed with Canada, to hear that at the top, the hiding because they're scared stiff, well, you know, frankly, I think that just put me over the edge. I thought, why am I joining a bunch of uncommunicative cowards? And that's all I can really say. And then, as I say, one other fact that's come to light lately is the Vicar of Baghdad, who you've probably all heard about him, is doing a fantastic job. But just of late, from the top brass, we've been told not to send any more charity donations to him. Why? Because apparently he has been involved in paying $7,000 ransom to get a girl back, a girl slave back to the families. And there's a UK charity watch who's basically saying he's used charity money to buy those girls back, so indirectly supporting terrorism with ISIS. Well, I think as one person put it, if my daughter was a slave there, I'd happily pay $7,000 to get her back. But if you use charity money to do it, then of course that's meant to be illegal. So an investigation's going on at the moment. But frankly, I'll support that guy. I think that guy's done more than almost anyone to fight for Christians in the Middle East. And I don't give a damn that he's used $7,000 to get a girl back. I think that's great. But I say, he's apparently been misquoted, but there's an investigation going on, so we'll see what happens. But basically, the top brass has said, until we know for definite, do not donate any money to him. I have to tell you, I'm happy to donate money to him, because I think he's actually doing something, whereas the rest just seem to talk and do nothing. So that's why I'm upset about OSMTH, and why I wanted to do this video, because while many people probably won't bother viewing this video, at least it'll be a record of me saying that I am very unhappy with the leadership of the order. I think they're a pathetic bunch of people that have no idea of how to communicate with the order at all. And I think they're a bunch of cowards. And frankly, as an indictment to a Knights Templars and an NGO for the United Nations, I think that just stinks. So, there you go. That's my view. Very dissatisfied with it. I am actually considering leaving the order right now. But I I think I'm contractually have to do one more newsletter, which I will do, and that will complete 4 years of doing the Grand Priory newsletter for Canada. But at that point, I'm definitely not doing the newsletter anymore after that. I think 4 years is enough. But as I say, at the same time, I'm seriously considering leaving the order right now. Okay, so there you go. I mean, certainly make any comments you want on this video. If you happen to know anything, let me know. If you want to discuss anything, feel free to email me. I don't know, maybe there's something we can do somewhere around the way. Okay, anyway, enough. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.